And now, Jacob,
Father?
I speak unto you. Thou art my firstborn in the days of my tribulation in the wilderness. Thou knowest the greatness of God, and he shall consecrate thine afflictions for thy gain.
Jacob wouldn't have been more than about 10 years old when his family arrived in the Promised Land. A young boy born without a city, a country, or even a place to call his home, the circumstances of his youth were pretty dismal. Jacob paints a picture of his life with the sorrowful imagery of a boy lost with his family in a vast wilderness, fleeing for their lives, estranged from their bloodthirsty brothers, plotting against his older brother Nephi. Jacob later described his situation with the following words: "Our lives passed away like as it were unto us a dream, we being a lonesome and a solemn people, wanderers, cast out from Jerusalem, born in tribulation in a wilderness, and hated of our brethren, which caused wars and contentions. Wherefore we did mourn out our days." The word wander is used 12 times in the Book of Mormon and means to go about without direction, aimless, or without a certain destination. The Proto-Indo-European root of wander is wend, or to wind, turn, and twist. Surely Jacob, as the keeper of the records containing Nephi's writings, as well as the other 5 books of Moses, would have been familiar with the writings of Moses. The children of Israel, like the children of Levi, also wandered in the wilderness. When the Israelites provoked the wrath of God by following Moses reluctantly out of Egypt, by complaining incessantly during their journey, and finally by refusing to enter the Promised Land because of fear, God declared that they would wander in the wilderness for 40 years instead of enjoying the peace and rest which they could have obtained if they had been more obedient. No doubt the Nephites remembered the story of Moses naming his firstborn son. And Zipporah bare him a son, and called his name Gershom, for he said, "I have been a stranger in a strange land." This name is harked back to later in the Book of Mormon when the Nephites give land to refugees, the city of Jershon. Being familiar with the law of Moses, the Nephites would also have been familiar with words like wander, strange, and wilderness. The word stranger is used in the Old Testament 232 times. In the Book of Mormon, it's used 13 times. The phrase wanderers in a strange land comes up many times in Scripture as well. Jacob was probably using familiar language from what he had been reading to describe his situation, and later his descendants would use that same language to describe their situations. People lost and alone, uncertain and far from home, had someone they could look back to in history and feel connected to, knowing that at some point they too would be delivered. The word stranger today means one who is not known, or one who is not familiar. Stranger comes from the French word for strange, or external, alien. It signifies one who's on the outside, a foreigner. There is another definition of stranger in Hebrew, but we'll save that one for last. There's a lot of other spiritual significance in these stories of wandering the wilderness, specifically in the numbers used to account for this period of wandering. The number 40 has special significance in Hebrew as well. In fact, the biblical book called Numbers is actually called In the Wilderness in the original Hebrew. In Scripture, the number 40 symbolizes a time of trial, testing, uncertainty, and difficulty. It signifies effort, wandering, and wondering, and it symbolizes change. The number 40 represents times when people's faith are put to the test for indeterminate amounts of time. That's the paradox of the number 40 in Scripture. Though to us, that's a number that we can grasp and make sense of, in reality, scriptural writers would use the number 40 to identify an indeterminate amount of time for wandering, suffering, learning, testing, and difficulty. Elijah traveled to Horeb and Mount Sinai in 40 days. Moses spent 40 days in fasting and prayer in Mount Sinai as well. And later, Jesus Christ himself would fast for 40 days and 40 nights to prepare for his ministry. Jacob was not the first to wander, and he certainly wasn't the last. There are countless stories, told and untold, and even lost stories of people who wander in search of their land of promise. After Jacob, many more spent their appointed times in the wilderness, a symbolic separation, a period to be lost and tested, to be alone and to seek direction. Jacob later taught of the importance of being reconciled to God. The word reconcile today has a meaning of being reunited, unified, and becoming one again. It literally means to bring together. And as someone separated from family and home, many years in trial and turmoil, lost in a vast wilderness, I'm sure words like those had special meaning and gave hope to that man, a wanderer in a strange land. If we go back to the last Hebrew definition of stranger, another interpretation of the word stranger was guest. The Lord called his people strangers many times, reminding them that they were a people prone to wander, prone to leave the God they loved. But he continually watched over them, preparing a place for them and making a way where there was none. He welcomed them home, leading them in their wanderings. Similarly, we can look back to our spiritual forebears and take heart. We, like them, wander in our own wilderness of affliction. We're being tested, and we experience trials. We don't always know how long the journey will take. We may worry about whether we'll achieve positive outcomes. We don't always know the course that we should travel. However, the wilderness is a place where we can be tested and prepare ourselves. If you feel like you're wandering in the wilderness now, you're in good company. Alma, in his preaching, spoke of the power of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the redeeming sacrifice and atonement, with power to restore us to our spiritual home. He spoke hopefully and with fervor, praising God, that though wanderers in a strange land, we are thus highly favored, for we have these glad tidings declared unto us. Yea, blessed is the name of my God, who has been mindful of this people, who are a branch of the tree of Israel, and who has been lost from its body in a strange land. Yea, I say, blessed be the name of my God, who has been mindful of us, wanderers in a strange land.